Hello there. Today's tutorial is going to be about head swapping. This was a request on the last tutorial. So the best thing to do here is get your two models. I have both of them open in two different blenders. You'll notice that this model has a collar, and if you pay close attention, you'll notice that tons of models in VR and all around all seem to have collars because it helps hide neck seams. However, in this tutorial, I will not be using the collar. I am actually going to be removing it from this model. So I can show you how to merge a neck with no seam. Now that I've removed the collar, I'm going to hop over to the model where I'm going to be using its head and placing it on the other model. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit separate by materials in cats. What this will do is it'll separate the body mesh into every possible material. So if you see here, I can click on the shoes and delete those. So I'm just going to sit here and delete every part that I do not need all the way up to the neck. For this last remaining part, it looks like an entire mesh, so I'm going to actually see if I can just select everything except for the top part of the neck here, because I want to show you merging a seam here. Let's actually just center it. And just delete. I'm going to zoom in here. All right, we almost got an even neck here. Just going to have this delete one more row, vertices. And there we go. It looks like every other material in this model is part of the head. So now that I have my head model prepared, I'm going to move on to removing all the unnecessary bones. Now, a quick way of removing all the bones would be go to the show more options under model options in cats and hitting 0 weight bones. This will remove all bones that have nothing connected to them anymore. All that you'll be left with is just the body frame, because cats, no matter what, does not delete the base skeleton that is needed and required by VRchat. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select everything except for the chest, neck, and head, and everything above that. I'm going to click the shoulders too. Then I'm going to just delete them all. Now that I've deleted all the unnecessary bones, all that's left is the meshes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit join meshes in cats to merge everything back together into just the body. I'm going to save this out as a Blender document, and then I'm going to save it out again using export. You'll have to use the export option in Blender and not the one in cats, because it'll warn you that the avatar might have things missing or have too many of something, because it puts in optimization rules. So we're going to hit export here. And I'm going to just save this out as, I'm going to label it head, so that I know every time I bring this in to the other projects, it's going to be just the head. So now I'm going to go in here, I'm going to import the head from the other one. So let me grab the file location. And I'll be pulling in the FBX for just the head. Now that we have the head in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to armature. You'll notice that now there's two armature options here. You can switch between the one you were working on originally and the new one. Before we continue, I'm going to prepare the old model to have its head swapped. So we're going to do the same thing as before, but in reverse. So now we're going to go in here, and it's already separated from before. So I'm going to remove the tail because this model I'm not going to be putting a tail on. Looks like her legs are considered a tail. However, on this model, there's going to be some things I'll have to fix eventually. But for now, I'm going to just focus on swapping the neck. And during this process, make sure that you're not accidentally deleting things that are necessary. All right, I believe I'm done removing everything that's important from this model. Or not important, I should say. I should say everything that's not needed. All right, so I merged those back together. And you'll notice there's still bones for the tail and the ears. That's where that option from before comes in. Next, you'll want to select the eye bones that were there because they're not going to be in the head swap. However, if you do not delete them, it will use those eye positions in the merged version. So you'll want to remove these or merge them into the parent to make sure all bone weights are in the head that are connected to this model. Lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to actually go to the body mesh, drop down this here, and we're going to right click on the key here and hit delete. That'll delete all shape keys from this model. Unless you have shape keys such as thigh enlargement, removing shoes and other parts, you'll just want to delete everything because all the shape keys were actually in the head. And what will happen during merger is it'll merge the blend shapes from the old one and the new one, and you'll have a bunch of empty blend shapes that don't actually do anything. Now that we've removed the unneeded blend shapes, what we're going to do is we're going to enable the head that I was hiding. And we're going to go over to this new option that is going to show up here that shows the armatures for both the different models that are separated right now. I'm going to select the other one, which is going to be the head. Now I'm going to hit Fix Model, but you're going to get an error. Now the reason you're getting this error is because it doesn't have the rest of its body, which we deleted earlier. And that's okay for now because we're eventually going to merge it together and it's going to have everything it needs. So now that we've merged, we're going to make sure you have the armature selected. We're going to scroll up here on the side panel, and I'm going to use the Z option here to raise the head up and down. What you can do is you just click and hold and drag and it'll work. Now to move it forward, you're going to want to use the Y, and you can adjust these or even use the tool down here to move it around yourself manually, but I find it easiest to adjust it using the numbers up here. So I'm going to lower her a little bit, get her head to looking like it's in the right spot. Her head might be a bit too big, so I'm also going to show you how to scale too. To scale, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, and I'm going to now drag downward, and it's going to shrink her head a little bit. But you'll notice it also pulls it towards the center of the stage, so you're going to have to keep raising her up and adjusting that way. Now, I think her head is pretty much there. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. All right. Almost there. All right. We're going to go with this. So I'm going to lower this one notch. and I think that's going to work for me. You can always adjust this later by increasing the neck size in pose mode, so do not worry about it not being perfect. And now that you have them all lined up, what I like to do is I like to then hit A couple times on my keyboard so that it selects the armature and body of both models. I then go over and hit Apply Transforms using the model options in CATS. If that does not work after you merge, you may have to go down to Object and apply the positions yourself manually by checking all of these. So once that step's done and you have applied the transforms, what this does is it sets that position as its default position so that when you go to merge everything together, it doesn't move it back to where it was when you brought it in. So now we're going to go to the Custom Model Creation tab. Now what this tab is going to do is it's going to let you know if the armatures can be merged automatically. Now, because the models have the same names, and that's why you hit Fix Model earlier, it has body, and then the armature's bones are going to match. So it's going to merge the neck bone into the neck bone and the head bone into the head bone, and then parent all the other bones appropriately. So now I'm going to hit Merge Armatures. And it takes a bit to think, but once it's done thinking, you'll notice that you'll have just one body mesh and one armature. One of the things I like to do after I've finished merging is I go to pose mode right away and I click on the neck. And don't forget to be saving during multiple parts of this process, because you never know when a part might mess up and you'll have to go back. But in pose mode, you're going to see that the head is indeed following and they're now merged together. Of course, the body's meshes do not exactly mesh very well. There's obviously a horrible neck seam, discoloration, etc. And that is now what we're going to adjust after I exit pose mode here. So to begin fixing the neck seam, what we're going to do is we're going to hit Separate Materials again, so we get everything split up again. Now, one of the reasons we want to do this is because we want to merge this all together without destroying the original blend shapes that come with the head model. Now, if you just go in and start merging the vertices without splitting the mesh up, and also splitting the neck away from the head, you will break all the blend shapes and have to do everything from scratch. So you'll notice for this model, thankfully the neck is actually completely separate from the head. What that means is when I click on this body here, and I also click on this neck, I can highlight both by holding Shift and clicking on both. And then so now this active one, and this is the original body, and then you hit Control J to merge both of those together. So now when you see me enter edit mode, I have both of those in there. Now that you've joined the meshes and you can edit both together, we're going to start merging the seam together. So first I'll hide all the unnecessary parts, which is holding and dragging down over the eyes, except for the one part that we need. I'll also hide the bones as well for now. So I'm going to hold Alt and then right click on the line for the original neck on the original body. And you'll notice that that neck is up a little too high for me. So I'm going to delete that row of vertices. And you can do this one more time or multiple times until you have basically everything almost lining up. So here's where it gets a bit tricky. So you'll notice that the original neck and the new head neck have slightly more, one has slightly more tries. So as we merge this, you'll start to have to kind of merge multiple together from the top to the bottom. So we're going to start with the very center one in the front and the bottom one. So you select both, hit Alt, then M, and you'll get this little menu. You can do this multiple ways, but I tend to just go with at center, and it'll merge both the top and the bottom together in between both of them, so at the center. You can do the same thing. I'll show you with this one. If you do it Alt M, you can do at the last one. So the last point I clicked on was this one, so it goes to the last point. If I do it with at first, it would go to this point because that was the first point in the selection I went with. But we're going to continue to do at center on this whole thing. And because you're in such a tight spot, make sure to lower your clip range down to its lowest. And you can also zoom in on those dots by on your numpad hitting the period button. And that allows you to zoom in a lot more. Now, if you recall me saying earlier that the top and the bottom don't have the same amount of vertices, you'll notice here, so if I merge this one to this point over here, it's really far apart, and then this one would be caught in the crossfire. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually click on this point, and then click on this one, and I'm going to do Alt-M and merge to last so that I drag that over here, and we're going to do that on the other side as well so that it's symmetrical. Then we're going to click on both of these vertices, then this one, and do merge center. So you just slowly go through here, select every single one that you think will go to that point, and it's a bit tedious, but you'll eventually get it all connected. So I'm going to skip ahead until I am finished merging the seam together, or until I run into any snags that I'll need to explain. So I was continuing to merge the neck, and I figured I'd point out that as you notice here, it's not exactly simple to see some of these here. So what you can do is you can actually click the button down here, limit selection to visible, and that'll change the depth buffer so you can actually see the vertices through. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select this row of vertices using that Alt trick and deselect all the inner pieces. And once I do that, this would make it simpler for me to merge moving forward because that row is not exactly needed. I'm going to skip ahead again until I'm finished with the seam. Alright, so as you see here, I've now finished merging the neck together, and I'm going to exit this mode so you can see the results. Now, I'm going to now teach you how to fix the chunkiness of the neck and how it didn't line up exactly with the new neck. So I'm going to highlight. If you hit C, you can open up this little circle. If you right click, you leave it, and then you can highlight the vertices that you want around the area that's all lumpy. And if you scroll wheel, you can change the size of that circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish selecting all of these. And now that they're all selected, there's a couple options we can do. What I'm going to do for this part is I'm going to turn on proportional editing mode. So if you go down to this little circle here and you click, it'll bring up a little tab that lets you choose between different modes of proportional editing. We're going to hit connected. So what that does is anything you move during this will move along with the connected vertices proportionately to the circle. So by default, you'll notice that it's moving everything nearby. But if you keep scroll wheeling up, you'll get this circle smaller and smaller so that it only affects a small area. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move that area back until it's almost in between where it was before. I'm going to click here. I'm going to drag that back. And if you keep scroll wheeling, you'll see that I can adjust the smoothness here by moving everything proportionally. All right, once I'm happy with this, I'm going to highlight everything again and show you the next little trick here. So the next trick to kind of smooth this out a bit better, instead of sitting there and painfully moving all the vertices until you're happy with it, is you can go to the Tools tab with everything that I just selected, and there'll be an option there called Smooth Vertex. And if you click that, what it kind of does is it kind of chooses the closest nearby area to move it to smooth everything out that's in the selection. So I'm going to increase and add a couple more things to that selection. And I'll just keep applying that. You'll notice that it's getting better and better. Looks like I'm almost there. I'm going to go back. So I'm also going to see if hitting W and then hitting smooth here aids us anymore. Yes, that also helped a tiny bit more. So now when I hit tab, you'll notice that the neck is basically smoothed out, and all that's left to worry about is the color difference between the textures. So for this next part, in regards to making the textures match, I'm going to personally use Photoshop, but you guys can use a free alternative such as GIMP, or I believe I heard Paint.net also has some free alternatives for image editing. So I'm going to drag in the textures here for the original head and body, and then I'm also going to drag in the fox one as well, the fox girl one that we were working on. So what I'm going to do is, this is the body we're using, so now it comes down to a decision. Do I want to make the body match the head's tint, or do I want the head to match the body's tint? For this one, it'd actually be easier overall to match the head to the body, because this particular model has tons of little grooves and areas that use the original, or that use skin that would take a long, tedious amount of time to repair and fix. So we're going to actually just pale up her head a little bit here. So I'm going to go back to the image editor here. And in the image editor, I'm going to go to the body here, or the head actually, of the girl. We might end up having to actually do the same exact method to the body as well, because it looks like it might be using some of her neck here. All right, so now I'm going to create a new layer and then go back to the body here. And I'm going to actually just copy an area here and paste it into the head. The reason I'm doing this is so that I have the skin color of the body we're matching, and we can use that to kind of ensure that the bodies are going to match. So I'm going to move this here. Right about there would work. I'm going to make another layer, and I'm going to select all the skin color here. I'm going to have to hide that for now. I'm going to select all the skin color to the best of my ability. I'll be doing this rather sloppily for the tutorial, but because over here, for example, this would be the insides of the mouth, so you're only going to want to get this area. So I'm going to actually just use the marquee tool and select just this area here. And then I'm going to simply turn on that other layer, and I'm going to duplicate this one just so that if I want to revert, I can easily do that. And then I'm going to just change its contrast, brightness, levels, etc. to get it to match. So you'll notice here, I can increase the levels. I can change this. So basically what you'll do is you'll just adjust this until you get it to look as close as you can. It does not have to be perfect, and I'll explain why shortly. So let me just quickly go through here and see what I could do to get that a little bit closer. So yeah, as you'll notice, that's a little bit closer. I'm going to hit apply. And then I'm going to change the saturation some. To get it to almost be the same. There's other methods such as you can desaturate and then recolorize the layer and everything, but you might lose some color variance by doing that. So these look a lot closer to me. So I'm just going to now hide this, and I'm going to save this out as a new texture. Do not save over the old one because you might need it. So I'm going to save this as new face. So we're going to go back into Blender. Now, when in Blender, we're going to want to change the material that this current face is using to the new one we just did. And before I do that, I'm going to mention one last little tip in regards to the neck from before. If you recall me mentioning, if you have the neck connected to the head, which is where the blend shapes are, you will run into an issue where you destroy the blend shapes by merging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that blend shape now connected to the body. And I'm also going to show you that if you hit the P key, you can actually separate what you are selecting from the original mesh. So now it's its own mesh. So what you can do is you'd select the neck that's connected to the head, remove the neck, and then merge it back together after you've already edited and deleted the blend shapes, not destroying the original. So now that I've done that, we're going to find the head by clicking on it here, and we're going to locate that texture. So down here, you'll notice that that's the head material, and if you hit the checkerboard, you'll have all these different materials in here. Quickly, if you go to cats and just go to material tab and hit the X near one material texture, this would remove all those little extras that you had in there. And then if you hit standardize in texture, it'll it'll fix all the transparency issues for the most part usually. So next I'm going to click on the little folder here. That is where the texture is. And we're going to find that new one that we made. So here, right here is base new face, hit accept. And you'll notice that now her face is in there and it's much, much paler. It does appear that the neck did use a little bit of the body. So I'm going to quickly go into my editor and do the same exact change to the neck area. There's other ways you can do it, such as UV mapping to another blank area. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in here and edit the body on that girl character. And I'll skip ahead until after I've already fixed that color difference. Alright, so I've now skipped ahead. I ended up fixing the neck by just going into the body texture and copying and pasting the same color that was in the neck over top of the entire body, because this pretty much the entire body is not going to be used except for just that neck area, and the shading would be the same. So now that I'm in here, I'm going to show you another tool in Blender called the texture painter. So I'm going to click on the mesh, make sure it's selected, and we're going to go down to here and switch to texture paint mode. So if you go to tool, you'll notice there's a couple different tools that we can use here. This is where we're going to fix these little seams here that are still pretty prevalent. So I'm going to use the smear tool for now. This might be the only tool you're going to need to use for this, but we're going to zoom in here, and it'll only affect the mesh that you're on. So what you'll do is you'll just you can change the strength up here. So I'm going to go to about 50%, and I'm just going to drag down from the top texture downward. And you'll notice that the seam slowly starts to go away, because what you're doing is you're dragging the color and smoothing it from the top texture to the bottom one. And you're just going to slowly do that. And I'm going to hide pretty much all the other models over here to kind of give myself some more breathing room. All right, so we're almost done here. other ways of doing this without actually using another program like Cats or I mean Photoshop or GIMP or Paint would be to use the same texture tool, and you can actually go to text draw, and in here you can actually just straight up draw on the texture itself. If you click the color here, then go to the eyedropper, you can actually just select the color on your texture, and I could have just painted over top of the whole thing, but sometimes it's not very accurate. And you can also use soften to soften the edges as well instead of just the smear tool. That's another way. So I'm going to finish smoothing this here, and I'm going to show you what to do after you're happy with it. Once you're happy with the way the next seam works, the last remaining thing to really do is you go up to the screen layout area of Blender, and you can go to UV editing tab. And this might seem a little daunting, but all you're really doing in here is you're saving out the textures that you just painted. So you'll notice down here in the bottom left it says image, and it has a little asterisk beside it. If you click that, it'll give you some options to save as or save image. If you just hit save, it'll save over the texture in your folder with what you've painted over. If you do not want to do that, you'll want to hit save as image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save as image, and it's going to bring this up, and I'm going to rename this to text paint body. And because I also painted the other texture, so for the body on both models, you're going to want to then click on this little image here, and you're going to want to search through this list for the other body you edited. So the best way to do that would be, if you actually memorize the what it's called, I'm just going to type in body and hope that it's in here. And it looks like it might be head, actually. Well, once you locate the other body, you just click on it, and then you save it just like that. I'm going to save over top of this one, however. Actually, no, I do not, because I would destroy my image that I usually would use for that body. So I'm going to save this as new text paint. Once you do this, you can go back to default instead of UV editing mode. Unhide everything. And as you see here, we have a pretty decent looking neck seam. I could sit there further and I can bore that real closely, change the lighting methods and other things like that to just make sure that it's smooth as best as possible. But I'm quite happy with this. If you're just having too much trouble, and you can always just download and merge in a collar or something like that into your model. So to finalize here, I'm going to go to Cats. I'm going to hit Join Mesh. And we're going to merge everything together. Now, thankfully, I've been saving during this entire process because this is the moment of truth to see if at any point during the seam fix you've broken the blend shapes on the face or anything like that. So I'm going to click on the body, hit the little triangles here, go down to the shape keys, and I'm going to click on blink. If you change the value, you'll notice that now she's blinking and it's not destroyed. So if I go through any of these, every single one of her blend shapes should work because I deleted the unnecessary ones from the previous body where I removed the head, and I only merged in the new ones without destroying them. But that about covers it for the next seam. Be sure to always atlas and optimize your textures afterwards, but that's a totally different tutorial, and that'll most likely be my next tutorial. So thank you very much for watching, and good luck with your head swaps.